Great, so I'll just kick it off. So welcome and thank you everyone for joining. My name is Jasmeet Sidhu. I am the head of brand marketing and content here at Nightfall. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Nightfall and what we do, we're a unified platform to control data movement across AI agents and MCP servers, endpoints, and SaaS. Basically, we allow companies to safely use and innovate AI. We're not about blocking AI. We want you to integrate AI into your companies, but help you use it safely by giving your companies real-time visibility and control over how that data moves within your company and essentially preventing what shouldn't leave. So, quick housekeeping. I'll start off by talking about what has changed in the state of the world and the state of AI and security and why this moment is so critical right now. I will throw it to our head of product, Anand, to talk through the capabilities and our brand new product launch. That is very big on our side, and then we will save time for Q&A at the end. So maybe we'll throw it to the next slide, Anand. So why are we all here? What has exactly changed? And I wanted to frame what this live session is about. This isn't about AI in the abstract. It's about talking about a specific new class of risk that's living right now in your environment and probably living right now literally on your laptop as you're watching this Zoom call. And today at Nightfall, we're launching something extremely special and big to protect that new class of risk that has literally developed in the last couple of weeks. And you're the very first audience to see this. We have not publicly demoed this at all before. So you're in for a treat. And this launch, I personally believe, I'm biased, but I believe it advances Nightfall as the most leading and innovative protective control in the AI data security industry. And we're excited to show you what's next. But in terms of what has exactly changed, even as a few months ago, AI security was about prompts and data leakages in chat interfaces. Am I, pasting a sensitive document into ChatGPT and what's going to happen to that document? Those are outdated questions, or I should say those are old questions that we're still concerned about, but the questions have evolved into scarier scenarios. They're no longer about what's keeping the security industry up at night and what's keeping us here at Nightfall up at night. And it's not going to be the things that cause the very severe data breaches that you're going to be reading about in the news tomorrow. I'm sure many of you have been keeping up with what happened with the Vercel breach, which was an employee connecting to a productivity tool, and that connected back into the company and leaked a bunch of data. Those are the kind of scenarios we'll be talking through and how Nightfall can protect you through that. So again, the new question, AI used to answer questions, and now it takes actions, and that changes everything about what security means. An agent can read your files, call your APIs, and execute code. The risk isn't what AI says, it's what AI is doing right now. And basically, every attack surface is now everything that AI can reach. And to just give you a sense of the scale of the problem, Gartner projects that 40% of enterprise apps will have AI agent integration by the end of 2026. And that's up than less than 5% in 2025. So that's a 700% increase in one single year. So especially when you think about where we are in the world right now with AI, I'm sure most of you saw the Fable launch yesterday, last week, the simultaneous trillion-dollar filings of Anthropic and OpenAI. Everyone is experiencing pressure from the board and their companies to integrate AI. But are you actually protecting what's happening and what AI is doing within your companies? Because there's now currently no human in the loop. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Next question. Or next slide. So so I'll be talking through 3 real scenarios very briefly, and then I'll throw it to Anand to talk about how exactly you protect yourself in these scenarios. So for example, scenario 1, an agent pulls your customer data. Someone could have slipped a hidden instruction into that Confluence document. The agent reads that as part of the normal workflow, and then the agent follows it and exports your entire customer list. It could be gone in 90 seconds. Nobody clicked anything, nobody got phished. It is just something an agent thinking that they were following instructions has done on your behalf without you even being logged onto the computer. Scenario 2, an agent is connected to an MCP server. An MCP server is basically a plugin that gives AI agents its capabilities, what it can read, write, and delete. So if that server gets compromised, the agent doesn't know. It just is following instructions. And in this case, it could delete old files. It could delete the wrong directory. There's no undo. An entire company's history and database could be gone in 90 seconds. Scenario 3, a coding agent opens a README file, totally normal. You've instructed it to do that, but someone snuck in a hidden command into that file and written it in a way that the agent interprets as an instruction. So the agent reads it, it follows it, and pushes your API credentials into a public GitHub repo, for example. And you don't find out, there's no flag that happens. You don't find out until someone outside your company uses those credentials to get into your company. So these are just some of the scenarios that are happening literally today, right now, and will be the cause of tomorrow's future data breaches. So the key thing I want you to remember is the agent can't tell the difference between a legitimate instruction and a malicious one hidden in the content that it reads. And that's the vulnerability that we'll be talking about today. So to bring it all back, these three scenarios that I have outlined all exploit the same gap. Agents act on legitimate instructions they receive from the environment, not just you, and existing DLP coverage can't even begin to see or cover any of this. It just literally was not built for this. This is the new world that we're living in right now. Next slide. So before I throw it to our Nightfall team, I just want to leave you with this quote. So every data breach you have ever heard of before this point required a human to do something wrong. An employee clicked a phishing link, someone mistyped a permission. Agents can do all that for you automatically at 3 a.m. So the point that I'm trying to make is the human error has always been the entry point for data breaches, and now agents can do that without you ever having to make a mistake. So that's a problem that we'll be talking about here today at Nightfall. And with that, I'll throw it to Anand.
Thank you so much, Jasmeet. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're taking the call from. Such a pleasure to be with all of you. I wish we could see you on the Zoom chat or screen here, but yeah, excited to co-present this with Jasmeet and Brian, my colleagues here today. And like Jasmeet pointed out, it's an exciting stage for us at the company to be able to build and announce a bunch of these capabilities today. So over the next few minutes, what I'll be doing is walking you through six specific scenarios. Let's look at what AI agent security looks like, the specific problems that we are solving, and then I'm going to pull in Brian, and he's going to do a show and tell. It's going to be a live demo. And at the end, we'll wrap it up with one more thing that we hope to surprise you there. So let's kick it off with the first scenario here. And we're taking a layered approach to this urgent and critical need for all of you. We've spoken with a bunch of folks that are on the call today. And starting with comprehensive visibility discovery, that's the foundation that we're building on here. As you're all aware, we do have endpoint agents on Mac OS and Windows. We've got more than a dozen API-based integrations with SaaS applications. But then the endpoint agents are allowing us to monitor what is configured from a local remote MCP server standpoint across all of these AI-powered IDs, extremely powerful platforms like Cursor, and then you've got model providers like Claude Code and so forth. And second of all, we are also looking at what is actually running on the device. So both those things put together gives you a pretty comprehensive context and visibility of what all MCP servers might be out there and what's the risk that you're running with. So with that context, I'd love to pull up a quick scenario and like walk you through what that means in practice. So as soon as you deploy the endpoint agents from a governance standpoint, in a matter of minutes, you're going to see all MCP servers that are configured either at a global level, a local project, or a folder level across Cursor, Cloud Code, VS Code, or any other clients for that matter. You can answer questions like which users have configured which MCP servers? Are they local or remote? What's the risk associated with those servers, right? And what's the volume of information that is passed along? And that gets you to identifying what's sanctioned, what's unsanctioned. A lot of customers tell us they manage a whitelist. So this is the starting point where you basically discover this, and there are a couple of views. There's an MCP server centric view, which is what I'm showing you here, and you drill into a given server. You can when you click on a particular device, you're going to see the specific client and the JSON, MCP JSON, and how it's configured. You can inspect whether users are using hard-coded credentials, whether it's browser-based auth or some other authentication mechanism that is also maybe in violation with the best practice or the standard that you may have rolled out within your org. And at the highest level, it tells you if you go to the device level view. So this is our demo tenant between Brian and me. We've got a handful, like 40 plus MCP servers that we've configured with active use. You could export this, you could query for this data via API. And one of the powerful capabilities is with the API, if you're already maintaining a whitelist, and you know that only a small subset of users are allowed to access certain MCP servers with certain tool calls, you can absolutely do that with the API and hydrate that list. What we are also doing for you is there are predefined templates or collections, and they're available across different categories. So if I pick the productivity collection, we've got platforms like Atlassian, Linear, Google Drive, and each of these applications have a bunch of tool calls that you can make, right? These are official MCP servers from these vendors. And you may roll out a policy in your organization that may state, I only want to allow perhaps these 8 MCP servers and these different tools for these servers. And this is the place where you could set that collection up. Over and above that, you could come in here and add, if it's not part of the predefined list, you have the ability to add specific servers and tool calls yourself. And the powerful construct here is, as you can see from the inventory, these are all the tool calls that we've made. You could define a collection using any of these tool calls. Some of these, in the context of Cursor, we don't get the MCP server name, but it's going to be a prepackaged collection for Cursor alone. And then once you identify those tool calls, you can create a custom collection, and it comes in handy in the policy, which Brian is going to walk us through in just a bit. So the net of it is this given our endpoint agents on both macOS and Windows. We are monitoring standard I/O traffic. We are correlating anytime you're trying to access remote MCP server with the HTTP accesses, and then correlating with that with the processes that get spawned on the endpoint. So that's runtime visibility. And then you've got configuration visibility across any of these AI IDs. So put together both those things, and you get a very, very powerful foundation that's giving you comprehensive visibility. So that's the first capability that you have access to with the latest and greatest capabilities. The second aspect, now let's talk about AI agent security, and let's break it down. All right. So when you have, I'm sure a bunch of your employees within your own organizations, you might have enrolled or rolled out harnesses like Cursor. And it's an extremely smart IDE with extremely powerful capabilities, right? Cloud Code is a harness. You might be using Copilot or Codex via other IDEs. So think of that as an orchestrator, as AI-powered IDEs with powerful capabilities that use these models. You could set it up with MCP servers, which is just like a protocol. It's an interface to connect to any enterprise systems in your environment. So in our case, as an example, we've got connectivity into a bunch of SaaS applications like Google Drive and Linear and GitHub and Fathom and so forth. So anytime you set up an MCP server, it's always going to come up with certain tool calls that you can make. So you have tool calls and tool responses. Shell commands is something that when you're within a particular agentic session, these harnesses or these AI-powered IDs are just going to make shell commands as part of that session to complete the user request that may have come up. And the way Nightfall works is we've got interception points at each step of the execution chain, right? So we can monitor each step of the session, intercept that for risk associated with that particular request, and then we have the ability to enforce guardrails. You could block, you could coach end users while they're in the moment and tell them that, hey, this might be a risky action, and you could nudge them towards the right ways to set up either the servers or the right tool calls that they should be making. Um, so let's break this down one by one. The first aspect is just the user prompt, right? You could be operating within Cursor, Cloud Code, the desktop app, or you could be using CLI. It could be any surface area. And the user types in a prompt. You could be entering secrets and credentials within the prompt. And you definitely want to avoid that, right? Or there could be a prompt that basically instructs the system to do something malicious that's not really the intended action, and we have the ability to intercept and block it. So the way, if you had to break down that flow, let's imagine you have an account manager or a developer who's trying to debug a customer issue, and they just take up the source code. It has a bunch of PII information in it, or secrets and credentials, and once you submit that, just in this case, in the case of Cursor, we intercept that, we scan the entire payload in a matter of milliseconds without adding any friction to the employee or the developer workflow. We classify and detect, identify according to your policy that, hey, this was regulated IP, this was confidential IP, and then we block it outright. And that blocking experience, true to Nightfall, in the moment coaching is a pretty big philosophical feature in our platform. We nudge users via Slack on the endpoint itself. So the same construct has been extended here. You might be operating within Cursor, and within Cursor, you're getting contextual information as to why you were blocked. What was the risky behavior. So it's extremely powerful in that way. And then rest of your SecOps workflow can be as is. You might be ingesting these incidents within a SIM or a SOAR platform. You can absolutely do that as you do today. The next aspect is tool requests. So this is even before the agent's MCP call executes. And there could be tool misuses or exfiltration. The tool call itself could be an exfiltration channel, right? To take a specific example, you could have an internal employee query the Snowflake, or rather the Salesforce MCP server, and they could make a quick request saying, hey, could you pull up all account records and could you send it off to Slack? Now, that's a basic example, but imagine pulling all your corporate IP or the most sensitive information that resides in any of these applications, and then in at machine speed you have a ton of important information that gets potentially exfiltrated. So that's a misuse potentially, that particular user and employee is not typically authorized to take those actions, but this can happen with an MCP server that's set up. Cross tool escalation. I may be making a call to the GitHub MCP server and just trying to view the recent changes, or read the repository structure, and it ends up potentially deleting a branch, right? If I just set it up with all tool calls that I should have access to. So that's a privilege of the permissions or escalations that I might have, and you want to prevent that. And lastly, all of these APIs just have excessive permissions, so you always need to have the right guardrails to be able to prevent that. So in this case, taking it a step further, so as far as the data flow is concerned, I type in a prompt, trying to share data with a customer data with a partner. It goes and makes it. It is supposed to make an MCP tool call to our CRM system, Salesforce in this case, and Nightfall has the ability to intercept that even before the call hits Salesforce, right? And we can block that right then and there. It can identify the fact that the user who's making the call, or the tool call, the policy that you've rolled out, a subset of your users cannot be making these calls. We are syncing all this information from your identity services like Okta, Google Directory, and TriID. So you can definitely roll out specific guardrails across your subset of employees, and then block these things from happening. The third example is a tool response. So in this case, the call actually goes through on the destination app, and as part of the response payload, it might come back with sensitive IP. And the next hop is going to be that sensitive IP, that regulated IP. It could be PHI information, is going to go within Claude. It's going to be read within the model context within Cursor. And you may not have BA agreements with some of these platforms. You may not, your posture may disallow you from having regulated IP or secrets and credentials from being read into these models. And that's precisely what this particular interception point enables you to prevent, right? So in this case, the Nightfall hook is going to allow you to get the tool response. But if there is a malicious payload, if there's a hidden instruction in a system prompt, as an example, or if the MCP tool response from Salesforce or Slack returns sensitive IP in its payload, we intercept that, we scan that, and all of this is happening in a span of milliseconds. There's absolutely zero friction from a developer, from an employee standpoint, and we have the ability to block it, right? So that's the power of this construct. And then coming to shell commands and shell responses, this is a pretty compelling capability here and extremely powerful. So if I'm sure you're familiar with how powerful tools like Cursor and Claude Code are. So if you may not have set up a Jira or a Salesforce MCP server, but if you just, as part of your instructions, as part of the session, it needs to collect some data from Salesforce or Jira or take any other app, Google Drive, right? It's just going to bypass the MCP server. It detects that there's no MCP server set up, and it's going to attempt to go ahead and read that response with a direct API call. There might be a bearer token setup. That user may have API access to some of these apps, and it's just so smart that it'll figure out, bypass the MCP server and make a direct call, an API call to one of these applications. And the way that API call, it's a curl request. It's a shell command essentially, right? So there are two aspects here. In the first example, you initiated some request. There's no MCP server. It detected it, and it intelligently redirected it into a curl request that uses a bearer token to Jira or any other SaaS app, and it identifies that it's allowed. As a user, as an employee, I'm allowed to access these SaaS applications via an API. And the call is going to go through. The key point here is, if you want to prevent that, you have the ability to prevent that. But let's assume in this case the call goes through, and Cursor or Cloud Code make a direct API call to Jira and they get the response. Let's take it a step further. Now, if that response, again, the same example, if the response from one of these SaaS applications or any of these cloud infrastructure services, it could be a S3 bucket. If it returns regulated IP, sensitive IP that you do not wish to expose in the model context, again, you have the ability to intercept the shell response and block it at that point, right? So the policy construct is extremely flexible. It's extremely granular. You can monitor these shell commands and block it at any step of the way. Um, Lastly, it's the model response. So let's imagine you've probably not set up blocking policies at any step, any of the previous steps. You still have the ability to set up a monitoring policy on what the model response is. So the model response may return sensitive content. You absolutely cannot block it, and that's not just like Nightfall. Once the model has read that context and it returns that data, we classify that for you, and you get that context within the platform. But again, if there are system prompts or there are certain instructions that shouldn't have been exposed to the user, but it happened, we do have a prompt injection detector that we're announcing today that allows you to monitor all of those. Lastly, a few minutes before I give it to Brian, and he's going to be showcasing all these scenarios, from a supply chain risk standpoint, you have skill files, you've got tool descriptions. A skill file makes all of us, it's so empowering and it makes all of us so productive. It's a shared context across the whole company. You could repeat a bunch of tasks extremely quickly. But the big downside with this is, of course, there are official skills, there are some trusted repositories. Employees internally may be sharing their tips and creating their own skill files, but there are dime a dozen, thousands, if not more, of publicly available repositories and skill files within these repositories. Anyone very easily can import a skill file within a corporate setup in Cursor and Cloud Code, and you have no idea what these skill files are doing, right? It could be malicious instructions that are baked in into that skill file. As an example, it could be a GitHub PR review skill, and for all you know, it's reviewing all your PRs on your corporate source code, and at the same time, it has a malicious payload or an instruction that basically exfiltrates all your source code via a curl command, right? There could be a skill file that basically opens up a reverse shell on your endpoint, and you have absolute zero visibility. Existing tools, it could be network layer proxies, it could be SASE platforms or traditional endpoint legacy DLP platforms. They have no visibility across any of these channels, and Nightfall gives you complete coverage on that dimension. And the last example here is just the tool descriptions as well. Even the tool descriptions could have malicious instructions in it, and it can steer the behavior across these sessions. And we have the ability to detect that and identify it. So that's just setting the context very quickly. I'm super excited to now hand it off to Brian, who's going to walk us through these scenarios, and you will see the product live in action. Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Anant.
While Brian pulls it up, let's keep it interactive. Please keep the questions coming, and we're happy to answer that live.
Okay, so what you're looking at now is Nightfall, and if you were watching me early in the webinar, I was going through some scenarios and testing detections. Um, all of our policy events, whether it's detecting information in SaaS, things that we've done before and that we're famous for, detecting access changes, detecting human data movement, will land under incidents. And we've added these new functionalities for machine movement or agent movement of data to our exfiltration product. So you can see them landing here. And let me go through a few of these scenarios that Anant talked about. And just to kind of make it real for you, maybe some of you are familiar with our Copilot, which is an agentic workflow. It's Nix over here. So when you're thinking of those flow diagrams that Anant was showing you, I can do the same kind of thing with Nix just to make it real about where the model is participating and where the agent is participating. So say, for example, if I ask it this question, retrieve the past 7 days and go find out where data is flowing into GenAI sites. What's happening behind the scenes? This is my user prompt, right? Then the LLM, it goes to an LLM. The LLM will interpret my question and go, okay, I need to pull 7 days worth of data. It hits our MCP server, and then that data is returned back to the LLM. The LLM then internally does event correlation and summarization, and then responds with this response. So we have a user prompt, an interpretation of that prompt by the LLM. We have a tool request, go and hit Nightfall MCP and get the data that we need. We have a tool response, which is the data we need to answer this question. And then we have an LLM response that then presents it, in this nice table. So just some ground setting. So I'm going to do that same kind of thing. I'm not going to use Claude Code, but if you all are familiar with any of these tools, they'll run in a terminal or they'll have an agent workflow within an IDE. Claude Code works both in their desktop application or in a terminal. So this is how, if you haven't tried it yet, this is how you would interact with these agents, these LLMs. So right now, let me move some of this stuff around. I'm going to start a new session, a new agent session. So right now I'm in Cursor, and Cursor is a development IDE. So I have opened up a project here that has some files. So in this case, it just has some of the files that I've been testing our tools with. And on the right here, I have my agent that I'm interacting with. So Cursor is the runtime orchestrator. It's going to call the LLM to interpret the command that I give it. Then the LLM is going to figure out what data it needs, go call the MCP tools that it needs. So the tool call, the tool request, the tool will respond with data, and then the LLM will respond. And so, if anywhere in this flow there's sensitive data or an attack, Nightfall will hook it at all those points that Anant just showed you. We'll do scans for those kinds of behaviors, and then we'll stop it. So, also, when I go through this demo, just know that if you've worked with Gen AI, you ask it a question on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, you might get different responses. So, I mean, this is a real demo god kind of situation. So let's see what happens. So my first example, let me pull this up. My first example is I'm going to just do something really simple and put some sensitive data in a prompt. So here, if I can zoom in, maybe you can see this. So here I'm just saying summarize this customer record, and I just want to say summarize this customer record. And so in here I've got Jane Doe, I've got a social, it looks like maybe I've got a credit card, and I've got an email address. So I have PII in my prompt. Nightfall can detect this before it goes to the model and stop it. So let's see what happens when I hit send. Okay, so as Anant talked about before, we are hooking. We have hooks in between each one of these agentic steps, and here my policy tells me, "Yep, Nightfall's detected sensitive data in that user prompt." Cool, and that action was stopped. So next, let's try something a little bit more sophisticated. Let's go and try to read some data that's local. So I'm going to read this customer record that's local, and I'm going to try to post it to a Slack channel. So when I try to post it to a Slack channel, that is a tool request. And we're scanning currently for sensitive data there as well. We have a policy for that. So the first thing it does, I mean, these agents are so smart. It recognizes that Acme Corp is the customer channel that I need to post it in. So here it's trying to find the channel to post it in. Now it's found the data. And then here in the message, Nightfall blocked the Slack message because the requested data had sensitive information in it. Nightfall's hook is doing the job. Great. So if I went into my Slack and I looked at the Acme Corp channel, I wouldn't see sensitive data in there. Awesome. Okay, so we've done a user prompt, we've done a tool request. Let's do a couple tool responses and see how Nightfall handles this. So I'm going to switch to a different desktop here, and I'm going to show you this linear ticket. So I have a linear ticket, and if I zoom in, you can see it looks normal, but in the middle of this linear ticket, I have this prompt injection attack. And this is one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back into linear. Whoops. I'm going to switch back into linear and say, summarize this ticket. So it's going to, the model's going to know, okay, I need to call linear. It's going to do a tool request requesting this record. And then it's going to try to return the data, but we have that prompt injection attack embedded in the document. And before I do this, I just want you to know these tools like Cursor, these models are very, very smart. Sometimes that prompt injection will get past their detection. Sometimes it does not. So I've seen this in both ways. What Nightfall does is just make sure that it never does get through. So when I do this, let's see if Cursor and its model are smart enough to identify that prompt injection attack. So it's gone and grabbed that linear ticket. And it's pulling it back. And remember, this is a response. So here we go. It summarized it, and it looks like Cursor in this case has found that hidden HTML comment that had the prompt injection attack. Cool. So either way, you're covered. Um, Fantastic. Let's look at a different kind of tool response. In this case, I've got some credentials. So I'm going to go back to my browser. Here is a Notion document where I have some Stripe setup credentials. I have a Stripe key and I've got another private key, just some data from our test, from our sample data set that you can look at online. So again, I'm going to go out and ask for this record. So the tool request is to go find this record. The tool response will have sensitive data in it. Okay, so it found the page. Now it's reading it. Let's see what happens next. Okay. In this case, it looks like in this case, Nightfall redacted it. So, so okay. So in each case, so far I demoed, or the things that I demoed was just to summarize things, PII in a prompt, um, uh, sensitive data in a tool request, a prompt injection in a tool response, and some sensitive data in a tool response. So I demonstrated four of the many things that Nightfall can do just live here. Now let's go look at the SecOps experience. And I can see that there's new events coming in here. Let's start with 6 minutes ago. So here was the first thing that we did, and I believe that this should be, yep, this was the sensitive data in the tool prompt. So when Nightfall gets an event, it will tell you uh, when it happened, the policy that it triggered, the action that it took. And if you click on it, you'll get more information so that you as a SecOps person can understand exactly what happened. So you can see the findings that it found. It showed you the user prompt. And so, yes, you can verify that, in fact, there was that social security information. Next, really quick, this was our second case where we wanted to summarize this record, and you can see that it found sensitive information in the tool request and in the model response. And in the third case, again, this is the place where there was the stripe key in the tool response, um, and Nightfall again. Oh, and the prompt injection. So it grouped these two together. If there's a cluster of behaviors that are happening within a few seconds of each other, um, we'll group them together just to keep your workflow slight, because it's coming from the same device, same person. You can see these things happening together. So in this case, it grouped the the key, the cryptographic key, and the prompt injection attack all into one. So those were our four tests. And after this, oh, let me just quickly show you one policy that I'm going to call it a day. So the way these work, I'm going to look for sensitive data in the tool response, for example. So with Nightfall, let me refresh my browser here. Okay, we might be just having some latency here in our agent. Let me try another one. No, these things pop up immediately. Anyway, when you're building an exfiltration policy, first you'll set what you want to scan. That's the devices and users. Next, you'll set the trigger. So we hook into each one of those tool requests. Sorry, each one of the hooks, the prompt, the tool request, the tool response, the LLM response, and the shell command. And in each one of those, you can look for sensitive data or turn on our new prompt injection detector. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Ananth.
Awesome. That's super impressive. Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen. Cool. So yeah, in summary, Brian covered this. We've got a consistent policy framework. There are three modes. You can keep this in monitoring only. You can enable any of the six interception points. You could coach your users without really blocking them by having ID native messaging and notifications, or you could take it to the next level and outright block, as well as notify users for the most egregious or potentially risky actions. So that's the summary. We have one more demo. Again, super excited for the latest capability here. As you know, this was announced a few weeks back, but Nightfall has its own MCP server. So a lot of you operate within the console. You have a extremely simple, powerful triage and remediation experience. You have the flexibility to ingest all of our policy incidents within an external SIEM, SOAR tool, a ticketing system, or you could operate out of Slack with our Slack alerting. We are now enabling and empowering you even more with our own MCP server. And if on the SecOps side, if you're adopting Cursor, Cloud Code yourself, VS Code, you can use the Nightfall MCP server to query policy incidents, to take remediation actions, to build executive reports or SecOps reports that might be important for you. And you could do this all the while sitting within a platform like Cursor. So in this case, I'm going to be running just a simple query to fetch the kind of information that Brian was showcasing just a while back. But then for one of the queries that I just executed, this is an example response from the Nightfall MCP server, and I asked it, okay, what are the top detection and response incidents in the last day? Or what are the top exfiltration prevention incidents, right? So it's going to summarize it for you. It tells me the number of incidents in our demo environment, all the local and remote MCP servers that have been discovered, which ones are remote, if it considers any that are shadow, likely instances of shadow, and then it also gives you the breakdown of the number of tool calls across device. Right, so this is again a pretty powerful capability on the SecOps side. So excited for all of you to try it out, set it up, and if you have any feedback, let us know. This is consistent with the API that we have. So we've exposed all the MCP tool calls. There are close to 20 different tools that we've exposed via our own server. Um, so that with that, in summary, to cover what all we've presented today, there are five key things to take away. The first one is discovery. There's comprehensive inventory and discovery of all local and remote servers, not just what's configured, but what's a runtime view. Second key thing that we covered is inline security for any agentic sessions within these harnesses and AI IDs that we talked about, and the granular interception points that Nightfall has. And we have the ability to govern and remediate that, not just based on the sensitivity of the content or the content classification, but do that on the posture, whether someone is allowed to make a certain tool call or not. The third thing that we covered is the intelligent policy engine that we have that's extensible to this new critical and fast evolving, fast emerging vector on AI agents, and the different modes that are available with the policy. The fourth thing is you have the exact same capabilities with Cowork, so you can govern and classify Cowork sessions. There was a live question in here where you might be running scheduled tasks within Cowork. We can classify that and bubble up the risks, or if there was certain sensitive content in those. And lastly, the fifth thing that we just covered was our own MCP server and SecOps powered within any of these intelligent IDs. So we are one of the only DLP platforms that is out there that provides a unified control plane, not just for human or employee exposure or exfiltration risks, but have now extended this to AI agents, and we are going to be doubling down on this direction. Um, Brian, Jasmeet, anything to add to bring
We
us
have a few
forward?
questions in the chat. Do you want me to?
Yeah,
Oh, are you able to detect non-standard sensitive data? We're less concerned with PII and PHI and more concerned with intellectual property, clinical data, assay results, biotech specific information. I could take this one. So, I work with the data science team. So we do have a set of out-of-the-box file classifiers that will look for intellectual property and confidential data. So if it were things like contracts or HR reviews, mergers and acquisitions, internal source code, we have an out-of-the-box solution for that. In addition, if there are things like these are really interesting use cases, we have a user prompt-based detector. Thank you, Anant, where you can generate your own either entity detector or a file classifier. So if your entity was, say, like a medical record number, every insurance company, healthcare system has a different version of that. You can do that and it'll go beyond regex detection because you're giving it the context of, say, like this would appear in patient healthcare situations and billing. Same for file classifier. If you have a standard format or the content is consistent, you can give it a prompt and keywords, cold words, and then if you see in the middle right of the screen, there's a test prompt button that's deactivated. So once you enter in your information, you can test it. And so we're kind of helping you be your own data scientist. You can test that, of course, in Claude and ChatGPT. But once it reaches a threshold where the LLM is confident that it can identify your data and exclude all the other things that it might scan, then you're ready to go. Next question. Does the agent deploy the hooks or should it be managed via a separate MDM? You want to take that one, Anant?
yeah. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, absolutely. You can deploy the hooks via an MDM, just like you deploy the endpoint agent today. There's support for more than like any MDM platform that you may have. Yeah, just roll it out via those platforms. Once you do deploy the hooks along with the MDM profile that we need, You also have the ability to monitor when was the last time the hooks were executed, if at all they were configured on a given device, if a user has tampered with it, and so forth. So there's granular states available on the device list page.
Okay, another one for you, Anant. How does Nightfall work with Claude Teams plan rather than the enterprise plan?
So this would work regardless of the plan that you're on. With as far as co-work is concerned, there's a hotel connector that we have, open telemetry. So you could set up metrics and have the co-work specific session information go out to an open telemetry endpoint, and we have the ability to classify and bubble up the same context, the same information that Brian showcased a while back. And then as far as the Claude Code or Claude Chat is concerned, that is covered via hooks, as well as a combination of the endpoint specific exfiltration vectors that we have. So why the endpoint? If you're using Claude on the web, the Claude desktop app, you can monitor all data movement. We track the lineage, source information of those files. If you're uploading or pasting content, you have the ability to not just monitor it, but block risky actions in addition to personal versus corporate distinction on Claude.
Anant, you may have answered this one already, but can you detect remote MCP? Can you detect local MCP servers as well as remote MCP servers?
100%. And that's the building block, building foundation. That's one of our core differentiators. Given we do have endpoint agents on devices, we are basically monitoring standard IO traffic. Local MCP servers are even more risky, right? None of the calls are crossing the network boundary. So most of the other tools are not going to see that in your stack. There's a bunch of local MCP servers that you see here on the AI governance page. But as soon as you deploy the agent, we're going to monitor what's running and what's configured. And yes, we give you coverage for both local and remote MCP servers.
We'll give it a few more minutes for any last questions, and then I'll leave with a preview of a very exciting announcement coming on Friday. So yes, any last questions in the chat, but otherwise I will want to leave you with these thoughts. So we started with a simple observation. The question in AI has changed, and AI used to answer just questions, but now it takes action. So when it acts, it's acting fast, it's acting at scale, it's acting with no human in the loop, and it's on your files, APIs, your customer data, your credentials. And that's the new attack surface. And that's essentially what Nightfall was built for, as Anant mentioned, the unified control plane for endpoints, SaaS, MCP, AI agents. And no one else is doing this right now. I would really want everyone to walk away with that message that Nightfall is entering into new territory to offer revolutionary tools to protect us during this extremely critical moment right now in this AI era. So what you saw for the first time, how you get visibility and control over that data movement, it's critical. So if you are a current customer and you want to follow up with more details, please reach out to your customer service manager. Anyone who was registered for the webinar will get a copy of this recording. I know we went through a lot of information. So please share that recording with anyone who you think will be interested in. If you are not a current customer, we highly encourage you. You can set up a one-to-one demo session where we can evaluate the AI risk in your company and see how exposed you are. You would just go to nightfall.ai and you could schedule a demo there. You can also email me directly. My email is jasmeet@nightfall.ai, and I can make sure you're set up with a member of our team to talk through your AI exposure. And I'll leave this with one last thought. At Nightfall, our thesis and our strong belief is that the companies that will weather this shift where we're all being pushed to use AI, but we're all in a window where we're incredibly exposed, as I laid out at the top. The companies that will weather that shift are the ones that will treat agent security as a first-class problem and not something to look at after more and more data breaches start to happen this summer, I believe, if not in the next couple of weeks. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Again, if you are a customer, please reach out to your customer service manager. If you are interested in learning more about Nightfall, reach out to me, Jasmeet, at nightfall.ai, or go to nightfall.ai and schedule a one-to-one demo. Thank you all so much, and let's go Knicks.
Thank you, everyone.
Jasmeet, were you going to tease an announcement?
Oh my goodness. I almost forgot. Thank you, Brian. On Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, we have an extremely exciting announcement that is related to Anthropic, and that is all that we can say at this point. If you are on our email list, you'll definitely get a blast. Please follow us on our LinkedIn socials. An exciting announcement that is embargoed Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific. A very exciting announcement related to Anthropic and Nightfall. So we will see you then. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.